Welcome everyone to Charts Free webinar series. And right now I'll just turn you directly over to Jen Belk White.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jennifer Belk White, and I want to welcome you to today's webinar. I have the absolute pleasure of getting to moderate today's session, Bright Ideas and Quick Takeaways for Using AI in Training. Our speakers today are all chart members who are currently using AI in a variety of really interesting ways, and they're each speaking at our upcoming conference in Redondo Beach, which is August 3rd through 6th. We'll share more about that conference at the end of the session today. But without any further ado, let's start with our first bright idea from Paul Miramontes. Paul is a hospitality learning champion and tireless mentor driven by people-first values. He spent a decade at Disney and nearly 10 years elevating Wienerschnitzel's training programs, as well as 8 years energizing Chart. So Paul channels his passion for learning, sharing, and caring into empowering the next generation of hospitality leaders. Paul, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. Super happy to be here. We've got a great presentation lined up for you. And I get the privilege of kicking it off today. So again, my name is Paul Miramontes. I'm the Learning Development Manager for Galardi Group, the franchisors of Wienerschnitzel, Hamburger Stand, Tasty Freeze. So in the next few minutes, we're going to be talking about data solutions, just a simple, quick learning that I have. And let's dive into today's quick objective here. So today's objective that I'll be chatting about is discovering how to turn raw customer feedback into gold. In just a few minutes, we'll learn how to use ChatGPT to quickly analyze survey comments, spotlight some of those key guest concerns, and transform that data into meaningful training tools. It's fast, it's smart, and it gives you that power to make the real-time improvements to wow your guests and really energize your team. And us being leaders in the hospitality industry, this is going to help save a lot of time. Now, before I dive deep into that, the first thing I want to talk about is a recent article that I read on Business Insider magazine that talked about how much time we spend each year analyzing data. And some of the things that I learned from that article was that leaders in training and the training space, as well as the operations space, spend about 23 minutes per day analyzing data. That is just on top of all the different things that they do, 23 minutes per day analyzing data on average, right? That's almost 2 hours per week. And that's over 2.5 weeks of analyzing data per year, right? So a great solution that I had was starting off with, how do we power and become more efficient in analyzing these data by using AI? Well, the thing that I learned and I've been using a lot more of is using ChatGPT to create a solution with analyzing this data to give me the key points and learnings about how to analyze that data and then be able to be more efficient and spend more time on creating solutions and creating training materials to be able to attack those areas of opportunity more effectively instead of focusing so much time on analyzing that data. So let's dive into this a little bit here. First thing I'm going to use as an example is going to be Ovation. Ovation is the customer survey response company that we use personally. So the first thing I did was collect all the data. So for this example, I took 30 days of data of all the guest concerns and compliments and highlighted all that, copied it. And then what I did is I got ready to paste into ChatGPT. Now, the big key element here was all about the prompt, right? I was going to ask, I want to start by asking specific directions of what I'm asking ChatGPT to do, right? With keywords such as create, generate, or organize. And I had to be very clear. I wanted it to give me exactly what I was looking for. So exact directions such as, I want this in an Excel format. I want this in a paragraph. I want this in 2 sentences. So after taking all that, before I inserted all that data, the example I gave here, as you will see in this screenshot, is I inserted a specific prompt. Please take the comments below, organize them into 10 main concerns for the customer survey feedback to provided from customers who served our restaurants, and organize it into an Excel type of box for me. So once I did that, I gave it the prompt, then I inserted all of the data, and within 54 seconds, it organized it here, saving me time, that way I can focus on different opportunities. It gave me specific opportunities to focus on, and allowed me now to focus on creating solutions instead of understanding all the data. So this is what it generated in those 54 seconds. Just a small screenshot. I wasn't going to give you all 10, but these were the 5 areas of opportunity, giving specific examples of where I can work on. accumulating all that data, I mean, it was thousands of surveys that were inserted in there, and it gave me the key elements on areas of opportunity. So that allowed me now to go back and focus with my peers to be able to create those solutions, create those training materials, and now really start focusing on what we need to work on for our restaurants. Just a really great opportunity to be efficient and to really utilize AI to be a better leader that can now focus more on creating the content, being able to teach the content, and train all of our restaurants out there using this AI. So that was a quick learning that I have. Thank you so much for taking the time. If you want to connect, I'm always all ears. You got my QR code here. Now I'm going to turn it back to you, Jen.
Thank you, Paul. That's pretty amazing to be able to take all of that data and get the responses so quickly. I see Kelly's comment about compiling 8,000 comments, and I can just imagine how much more efficiently we'd work with ChatGPT. All right, next we're going to hear from another member of Team Wienerschnitzel and Team Chart, Matthew Steele. Matthew is a QSR training innovator and lifelong experimenter with tech-powered learning. He is currently the Director of Training and Innovation at Wienerschnitzel, and there he turns AI tools, gamified LMS rewards, and brand-wide challenges into the secret sauce that helps teams learn faster and serve smarter. Matthew, please share with us your bright AI idea.
Thank you so much, Jen. And I have the distinct honor of being preceded by Paul. So thank you, Paul, for warming them up. And we're going to continue on talking about data, talking about AI, and talking about Excel. And I think that, everyone knows how to use Excel, but can we really excel at Excel? This is going to be full of puns, as usually my presentations are. So just put your feet up on the table, and we're going to let AI do all the work today. That was another pun. All right, so here we are. We're going to dive right in. So which one of us has not gotten just a data dump of all just random, LMS data? It could be courses completed. This is an extraction from our LMS. One of the things that our LMS doesn't do fantastically well is reporting. It just kind of gives a big data dump. And when I see this come across my email, I think, oh, sheet. So I've got to somehow make all of this data make sense. And an easier way to do that, aside from trying to dig back in my memory and how do I write all these different formulas to really understand what I'm looking at here, what are the course completions, what are the average percentages on this particular course. So we're going to use AI. And so you can use AI in multiple different ways as it relates to Excel. Paul kind of shared a little bit about qualitative data of guest sentiment. We're going to look more at quantitative data and actual numbers and see what we can derive from that. So just as Paul mentioned, all about setting up your prompt. So what I'm going to do is, if you're using the free version of ChatGPT, this is how you would begin. Write a formula for the number of learners that have scored a 90% or above on, and we have a program called Drive-Thru Pro. The learners' names are in column B, so you just have to really set up where all of your data is, so ChatGPT can write your formula for you in the correct way. So we're going to say that quiz percentage is in column K and the course title is in column O. Keep in mind that this is a large data set with many courses listed, so it has to be very specific. It needs to have the exact course title that it's looking for in that column O. So let's see what ChatGPT has generated for us. It gives us, actually, this is just one little snapshot that it gave us, but this is for modern Excel, and then down below it actually gives you a separate formula if you're using more of a legacy version of Excel. This one will also work in Google Sheets too, so this is really awesome. It's a count a function. Again, this saves you a whole lot of time of figuring out, and I don't know which one of you all have played around in Excel and tried to create functions and it doesn't work, and you're spending hours and watching YouTube tutorials and trying to figure out, okay, how did this formula not work? How do I unbreak my broken formula? So plugging this into Excel in any cell within that sheet will give you the answer that we're looking for. So really what I wanted to highlight is this method is good for live data, shared spreadsheets. And so what I mean by live data and shared spreadsheets are those spreadsheets that you're going to come back to. You're going to continuously update. They're not a one-time snapshot. This could be something like you're tracking courses and you're consistently entering in learners information and what they've achieved. Or what we've also done on our side is we have a database for recertification. And so we've used formulas such as these to determine how many people that fall within these certain years need to take recertification and which ones are eligible for that particular year. So those two types of spreadsheets and data are perfect for this kind of application. Also, this allows you to have offline access to analytics. If you're using ChatGPT, and I'll talk to you in just a little bit about what that online access to analytics is going to look like, but sometimes if you're on a flight, you don't have that kind of information, or you don't always have access to the internet, this is a great way to have that all in one spreadsheet. Also, if you're using a free version of ChatGPT, so you don't have access to all of the amazing features of ChatGPT if you don't have that plus version. But if you do, then let's dive into what that could look like too. So you can level up your analysis, and then I put for $20 a month. This is not a kind of ChatGPT advertisement at all. However, you can get a lot of juice out of that lemon for $20 a month. You can upload entire Excel files, so completely unchanged. You don't have to do anything with them, just upload the whole thing. You can query your data, no formulas needed, so you don't have to set it up and tell it exactly what you want and then go over and copy the formula and paste it in your Excel file. And then this is really great for data such as survey results, something just as Paul mentioned earlier, that qualitative data, but also you can use it for quantitative data. And so we're going to look at what that looks like too. And so we're doing, this is the same file. This is that export for all of our quizzes across our LMS. And so I've written a very similar prompt, which is determining the number of people who scored 90% or higher on the Drive-Thru Pro quiz. So this spreadsheet is uploaded. It knows where the columns are. It knows what headers are for what columns. And I don't have to tell it that, hey, quiz percentage is in column K, because it knows that already after analyzing this sheet. So this is what it'll output. This is the same formula that outputted after uploading this document. So you can only upload documents and be able to extract this kind of information from ChatGPT by using the plus features. But you can really save a lot of time, and really you can take it a step further than this. So this is kind of surface level of, formula creation. But what if you want to dive deeper? What if you want to actually get insights out of that? You can, and I know this is an eye chart. I'm breaking the cardinal rule of PowerPoint. But these are some other non-formulaic AI applications. So you can derive high-level KPIs out of it. You can ask ChatGPT after uploading that document, what's the overall pass rate for all quizzes, or you can be more specific. You can get those course-specific insights. Learner analytics, you can ask it specific questions based off of learners that are in your data set. You can ask it for progress and improvement. For people who took Drive-Thru Pro more than once, does improvement between the first and second attempts, what's that look like? Compliance and completion tracking. So this is really important as we get into, certainly in the state of California, workplace violence prevention and then harassment prevention for all employees. So anyway, I know that you all can read everything on this slide. So there's a whole lot of stuff that you can crunch out of this data just by being able to upload your data set to ChatGPT within that Excel format. And you can really play around with it. So this is, honestly, for $20 a month, this is a steal, especially if you're doing this all the time. You're analyzing 8,000 comments at Whataburger. So Jen, back to you in the studio.
Thank you so much, Matthew. That alone was worth the price of admission. That was absolutely amazing. I spend more time trying to figure out Excel formulas. So thank you for that great insight. So we've heard both Paul and Matthew talk about the prompts that they use. And I can also tell you from experience that the wrong prompt takes you down the wrong path. So let's hear next from Jim Ridge, who is going to share 2 game-changing prompting techniques that have transformed him from, in his words, a proud AI holdout to someone creating superhero artwork and leadership tools with AI as his creative partner. Jim's going to share how to turn jumbled thoughts into structured plans and how to get inside your audience's head before you present, because great prompting isn't a pre-step, it's the step. Jim, we're excited to learn these prompting techniques.
Thanks, Jen. Where'd you get that information? That was awesome. Thank you. Hi, I'm Jim. Very happy to be here. This is my first chart webinar after many, many years as a chart member, so I'm really happy to be here. 2 years ago at Chart in Orlando, I proudly raised my hand when somebody said, "Who's not using AI at work?" I'm not sure why I felt so proud. Maybe I dumbly thought, who needs AI when I have me? Yikes. Boy, that tune sure changed quickly. After working with AI day-to-day training and for bigger projects, I quickly became aware that prompting isn't the grunt work that I initially thought it was when I started. I now believe that prompting isn't a pre-step, it is the step. And prompting definitely seems to be a theme with all the presentations so far. Why do I call it the step? Because prompting, let me get rid of this little guy here. Because prompting is how you get to the molten core of great output. Prompting is how you get to the fire. So how do you tap into that fire? How do you make sure you're not falling into the garbage in, garbage out trap of poor prompting and mediocre or generic output? Today, I'm going to share 2 prompting techniques that helped transform me from that proud holdout to somebody who uses AI as a thought partner to realize much more ambitious projects, along with my more traditional day-to-day work. And these aren't just prompting tips for me. They are total game changers. In Redondo, I am going to be sharing a 2-sided prompt handout. One side has the prompts that you're probably already familiar with, the pantry staples that are probably already in your toolkit. But it's the back side of the handout where the things really heat up. That's where the 5 elevated prompts, or what I like to call the long form prompt magic, lives. That's what you see now, with 3 of them hidden until we get to Redondo. If you think of great prompting as like building a delicious recipe, think of these elevated prompts as flavor bombs. Let's start with brain dump. When I'm overwhelmed, scattered, or seriously overcaffeinated, like I am right at this moment, I spill everything I'm thinking into the prompt box and I say, "Can you help me sort this out?" I just go stream of consciousness. I ask the AI, help me find a thread, a theme, an arc, a structure. And typically it's in there, but it's just hiding. And the AI finds it. In this example, I was charged with creating most of the content for last year's GM Leadership Summit. And I had tons of ideas, but I was all over the place. Claude AI read my messy thoughts and helped me out. Once I saw what the AI pulled from my brain dump, I either picked up those threads and started building, or I redirected, or I rejected it. It really doesn't matter or have to be exactly right, but at least it helps me stop from spiraling and it gets me started down a solid path. AI never creates my ideas. It just helps me organize them, to find a through line, to find the fire. I recently used this technique. Well, I use it all the time, but I used it when conceiving the Train the Trainer workbook and digging through a lot of Clifton Strengths data to find an analytical project that I needed to make sense for the team. Brain dump is what I use when the noise in my head is bothering me and my brain refuses to play nice, which is more often than I care to think. But even when things look clean and are organized, how do you know if this material that you create will actually land? And that's when I turn to my trusty audience mirror. Before I send out content to stores, to the ops leaders, to executives, I often run it through what I call the audience mirror. It's part of my job to keep it real for each specific audience. So in addition to the questions on the slide in front of you, I might also ask, hey, if you were a GM reading this, how would it land? Or if you were the CEO, would this answer all your questions? Or I'm going to have an audience with a wide level of expertise. Will this content engage all of them? Please explain your answer. This simple shift helps me sharpen the tone, the clarity, the structure before I put it in front of real people. The AI assesses how the audience might relate to my content and how I can adjust it as necessary. In this example, I wanted to know how the GMs would connect with the Leadership Summit agenda, what their concerns were, what might excite them, and how the content would land. And I got this very detailed response back, incredibly helpful. The audience mirror technique for me is like using AI as a rehearsal audience. It's a filter for tone, for content, for relatability. I'm going to share the rest of my elevated prompts in Redondo, plus a superhero spin on leadership development, some cool AI art as it shows up in my training materials, as well as my philosophical take on being a really good partner with AI. So, whether you're creating training tools, elevating your existing content, or taking on more ambitious projects, the magic truly happens when you slow down to go faster. That's how you get to the fire, not a dumpster fire. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jim. That audience mirror prompt is big. I see some comments in the chat that indicate that it resonated with others in the same way that it resonated with me. That is pretty amazing. So our final presenter in today's webinar is Donna Herbel. I will say that my own AI journey began when I attended a session that Donna facilitated at a chart conference a couple of years ago. Donna was kind of my gateway into exploring AI. And Donna is a veteran of the hospitality industry and a tech hobbyist on a mission. She is the founder of Blue Phoenix Learning, and in that role, she helps training professionals and business leaders choose the right tech for the right purpose and makes AI feel less like a robot revolution and more like your new favorite coworker. Donna, we are so excited to hear from you.
And I am thrilled to be here because Chart is the place where I've learned a ton, I've grown a ton, and it is simply a gift to give back. So let's dive in. In this area, we really want to talk about AI training specifically for teams. As a training department, whether you're a training department of one or many, what are some shortcuts that you can start putting in place to elevate work and save time, not only from now, but even as we move forward? And so one of the things as I work with companies, execs, and even frontline teams, when they're like, hey, we've heard of AI, we want to do some cool stuff. But then the feedback when you talk to like the front users is really, because it's not like I'm sitting around with nothing to do. I don't like, if this isn't a help, I'm not interested. Because what our frontline workforce and even managers and those that are working with professional development, what they really want is help me work better, help me save time, help me be more confident, help me be more successful. If it doesn't check those boxes, it's wonderfully interesting, not actually helpful. And so, some of the common things that come up when you talk about what's really happening in a day, conflict resolution, if you're a frontline leader or manager, there are some challenges with how that's frequently trained or administered in not only our industry, but cross industry, right? To be great at resolving conflicts requires my personal expertise. What do I know or not? And if my training department's provided me a point of work, it's usually generic, right? It doesn't address the fact that I'm not just meeting a tardy employee, I'm meeting Sally, and we've tangled twice this week. So it doesn't give you those specific challenges. Other things might be like, hey, professional development's important. Maybe I'm an early career leader or manager. People talk about professional development and development plans, and I don't know where to start. And I might feel like I don't have somebody to talk to. Maybe I'm new enough that it isn't safe to say I need help, or I'm uncertain. Is there a thought partner that can help me? And then meetings. Oh my goodness, meetings. That comes up a lot. People are like, we have meetings about the meetings, and then there's the meetings. And now there's AI note takers where people like, here are all the attachments. For those of you who weren't paying attention in the meetings, makes us crazy. And so that question, does tech really help? It's a valid question. And the answer is probably, but it has to be structured and it has to be done thoughtfully, not only today, but in the future. Because what would happen if this AI revolution that we're talking about could not only offer, here's, access to a site or access to a chatbot, but what if there was actually a hub where, for example, that frontline leader or manager could input a scenario? I really am meeting Sally. We really have tangled twice this week. And I really need some guidance for this moment in time, right? So if a user could put in a specific piece of information, what if they got trusted guidance that was highly structured and already prepared for their use, like, coaching points or questions or conversation starters? maybe a suggested document for the first time we're going to, or the last time, my HR friends in the webinar are like, but what if we could have like the pre-filled form or the guidance that normally people would have to pull and distill out of our training manuals? What if you could have a place to put your world together, including feedback from others and what it takes to elevate your career where you are, and you could get specific activities that you could manage up or share with your supervisor, and what if there was just a framework where we did meetings better as an agreed upon way of structuring agenda and outputs in our organization? Well, most people say that'd be cool. And it can be. So I want to introduce this idea of GPTs. These are generative pre-trained transformers. If you have a moment in the chat, it would be so cool if you just be like, I use GPTs. I don't know what GPTs are. I use many things. They might be GPTs. Let us know what your experience is. So I want to speak briefly to these. So GPTs are basically mini versions of the big LLMs or large language models. So think about ChatGPT, but loaded with, like when we talked about, for example, which I loved, Paul's example where he said, look, we have so much customer data and we can load it in and we can parse the prompts. But what if I wanted multiple departments to do that? What if I wanted a way for marketing to get marketing specific insights, but for operations to get a different set of insights, to take that same customer feedback, but parse it differently in terms of who's the user and the output? Well, you could do a couple of things. You could prompt your brains out and try to provide people that data because you're the resident experts in your companies. Or you could create a GPT with very specific instructions to ask the user, who are you? And based on that, provide simple outputs. So you've cut the learning about AI out of the middle and really provided people tools that just help them work faster, better, smarter. So that's what these pre-trained transformers are. Mini versions of the big guys, but they're already prepared with the stuff you know and the stuff you want, right? Matthew's example as well, when I look at, you can absolutely create this place where you put these large amounts of training data. A GPT would be something that you could put the effort into create or train once and use over and over and over again throughout your organization or across multiple departments. And they can even perform additional functions through integrations. You're going to start, if you read about AI in any way, everybody's talking about agentic services. And that's really just saying it can hook up to other things and do stuff. Like, don't just tell me about the report. How about you make it, mark it up, and send it, right? So that's coming. We're not quite there. Well, depending on your investment for tech, you might be. So love it. So I do feel like, though, we need a public service announcement, because I say this now in every room I'm in, because people ask all the time. They're like, well, but we have so much information. We've got all these manuals and stuff, and we've turned on Copilot or we've turned on Gemini, but it's not, our users aren't finding it helpful. Please help me pound the drum. When it comes to large language models, any data that you're uploading, these systems actually perform better with headers and bullets than paragraphs of text. I saw some things in the chat about, I've got all this data, I've got all this information. The more structured or organized the information is, the more likely these large language models will parse the documents and do them right. These advanced models aren't just reading the headers like the old search, when you go in and you're like, search me file names. They're actually looking at what's in the content. So refresher trainers, I would start training on how to differentiate, header 2 from header 3 in your formatting guides. And if you don't know what that's about, that's a good ChatGPT activity. The other thing is where you can start using common language. You'll find that these things that Jim and Matt and Paul talked about, where you can take, a brain dump of ideas or models over time. Well, if you're using different words like revenues in one place, but sales in another, you kind of got to decide which one's true and which ones you want people using your GPTs or chatbots to use more consistently, just to improve the results. All right, back to our regularly scheduled programming. GPTs. So GPTs just high level. Whatever you're using, the big players have some form of GPT element. So if you're a chat GPT user, paid users can create GPTs, but free users can leverage GPT. So if you're a JetGPT user, here's just a couple of grainy screenshots, but I figured it was more important to see the words than see the image. Upper left-hand corner, there's that little thing in the drop-down called GPTs. Check it out. If you click on it, you're going to see something that basically looks like an app store or a Play Store that you've used on your phone. And so you can look at these mini GPTs that are already pre-designed to do users and functions. I've opened up one. If you search Blue Phoenix Learning, I recently made that public. We built that in one of our AI training sessions, but we have a couple. We also have one that we built in a chart breakout session. Don't you wish you were already sitting with us in Redondo? But we have one that we built that was an example of a GPT welcome guide, where we showed trainers how to actually build beyond the handbook. So here's the back-end information, but giving a new hire something that they can just query on their time without feeling lost or embarrassed or confused. Just examples. If you happen to use Claude AI in Claude's paid version, anybody can access created artifacts for free. So as a training department, you can create an artifact and you can pass it out to employees, clients, individuals throughout your organization. Artifacts are a little bit different than standard GPTs. Artifacts in Claude are actually really good for creating a form or an activity. So if you have to take a piece of content and continually perform the same action. And I have here as an example, and we can drop into the chat as well if you just want to click in and try it out. I've, in about 5 minutes, created a Claude transformer, and I'm laughing because some of the outputs are questionable. And I was joking about that earlier. Not questionable like bad, but I was like, that's really an interesting take. But in this scenario, I said, as a training professional, oftentimes I have to create multiple versions of the same content. Think menu training. So how do I do menu training for the brand new hire who's literally in training right now, learning how to use the grills? How do I do this new menu training maybe for my English as a second language or low literacy learners? How do I do this same thing for my existing employees who are kind of over the dog and pony show and they're just like, what are we doing here? Because I'm a pro. And then what do I do for the visual learners, or even having just a point of work poster that's a good reference during this menu training? And so what this transformer does generically is it says drop in some content, and it will take a while because it has to think pretty hard. It's doing some massive work on the back end. So go get a cup of coffee. It'll take about a minute or two. But when you drop in information, it takes that information and creates 4 separate outputs for each of those. Now, in Claude doesn't create the pictures, but you can take that into a variety of sources or hook it up to an image generation solution and get your poster work done super simple. So that's a little quick note on artifacts. Then third up, if your company uses Google, the Gemini version of GPTs are called GEMs. Same story, different name. You create a backend, you put in some custom work, you structure the prompts, and it's really fast use for repetitive tasks, repetitive items. And if you're in a Microsoft house and you've turned on Copilot GPTs work exactly the same as Chat GPTs. So high level, what it is, how they work. And now let's just talk briefly about what you can do as a result of this conversation. If you kind of want to feel it, touch it, see what it's all about, maybe even make your own. How common are they? Pretty common. In fact, they show up in social media just for fun in my Instagram account. I created the leadership sage. I think she's good. She does okay. So if you want to take a look at a leadership sage, and this is an example of a GPT, which means just pre-trained AI for a narrow task. It's a pre-trained AI that works as a chatbot. Not loaded with really any proprietary information, but I did provide some guidance about how I want it to interact with users, lead with questions, be supportive, etc. If you want to check this out, go to Instagram. I think you can find it on Facebook as well. Go into the AI studio, search for Leadership Sage. She looks like this. And then on this screen, I just have an example of using the Leadership Sage. I said, hey, I was actually working with a friend. I said, I just want to have this person next to me role play recovering a customer who's had cold food. And then afterwards, we want to see how they did and see how we can coach them. They had the conversation. And we got some good tips back. And so for Leadership Sage as a GPT, you can use the text, the typing, but you can also click the phone button at the top and actually talk to it, which can be really powerful for some of your low literacy users, or for users in our busy restaurants and hotels who aren't sitting at desks and maybe don't have a lot of time for the typity type, but can get on-demand help with someone they can query. Second example, I mentioned it, and I'll drop this in the chat as I mentioned, but this is just the content converter. If you choose to grab the link, it goes to this restaurant menu generator. You can just click on the buttons that are there. This is wholly developed in Claude, strictly through prompts. You can load my sample data and look at the outputs. If you want to go further, you can actually click on the button at the bottom that says customize the artifact. And that's where you can load your own stuff and make your own things. And I did that a couple of times. That's why I was laughing about some of the outputs. I did one for safety, and I'm like, wow, there are safety habits for preventing lifting injuries I didn't even know about. It was wild. So here's what I recommend. Go touch it. Go do it if you haven't already done it. You can use this artifact from Claude. And in the artifact, I've also put a generic prompt that you can throw into Claude. You can throw it into ChatGPT. You can try it in your favorite solutions and just kind of start seeing how these tools can work for you. And just a side note, because although Claude doesn't do images quite yet, ChatGPT does. And so when I did this, I have a bunch of basil, go make me a basil menu. I'm like, by the way, make me the poster for the basil menu. And you can get some fun stuff out of that too. So my bonus would be to make them on your own. And you don't need a lot of guidance. It's really answer the questions, try and see what you can do with it. In closing, which is always everyone's favorite part of my presentations, I think they're like, ooh, this is the ending part. This is the listen up. By taking a team use approach, you can help your organization jump the learning curve and get to the real benefits that AI provides in being able to get to consistent work, better work, and better outputs so people can put their energy on creativity, execution, coaching, and follow-up, and less time and attention on work in the keyboard, which, unless you're in tech, doesn't drive revenues as much as we would like. Don't make everyone reinvent the wheel. Implement tools and think about tools as you're working personally with AI in terms of how can this help everyone, not just me. And you know what? Be bold and be fearless and be curious and be just a little better with it every day because no one woke up great at using these things. We've all learned it and we're all learning it together. So with that in mind, I'm going to pass it back to Jen, who's going to remind everybody here that if you are not yet planning to see us, you should.
Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you, Donna. That was fascinating and so much great information. I 2 years ago would never have thought that I would be saying today that I have built my own GPT and use it. It's my own leadership coach, and I built it in ChatGPT, and it was work, but it was so worth it. So we've got some really great stuff from today's webinar. We do have some questions, so I'd love to flip it to questions, and then when we close, we'll talk about the conference again. So the first question came through the Q&A, and Mallory is asking, what about the privacy concerns of AI tools like ChatGPT? Donna, would you help us with that?
I'm going to stop sharing so we can have a more narrow conversation. There we go. I think that's a great question. There's experts here who can certainly help. With regard to privacy, I think there's three big concepts that I would address, and I do address when I speak, teach, and train and work with companies on this topic. Number one, broadly, AI aside, if you want to be 100% sure your data is not going anyplace nefarious, you should keep it in a notebook, right? I mean, there's just risks and there's future unknown risks, right? To how data is transferred and stored. Things we used to take for granted, we don't anymore. So that's the most extreme, right? Most people aren't talking about that, but just understand that while there are risks working with AI, there are risks in digital, period, right? The second part is if you're on a free version, my rule of thumb, you've no expectation of privacy. There's a reason it's free, and it's not because you're friends. So your data is being mined and it's being used. So there are ways, however, and you can do this with some, and the tools are very clear. There's some great training guides where you can actually take the model and bring the model. You can use the model, but you can block off the internet or block off the access and control it. And you can apply the model in a private closed system. Now on the pay to play platforms, they've usually done some of that work for you. But in terms of privacy, if you're on the internet, you got to think about it. This isn't new, right? But if you're on the free versions, no expectation of privacy is my rule. And even if you're on the paid versions, approach with wisdom and and talk to your IT team. They probably have strong opinions. I saw Matt come off mute because I think he's dealt with
Yeah.
Wienerschnitzel.
No, well,
attitude.
and I really just wanted to highlight I would just look at your data and see, I mean, is there really any personally identifiable information? Anything that if you left this at a bus station or an airplane, would anybody care? So I think that's a good place to start. But also, you mentioned, Donna, the paid version of ChatGPT, and then of course the free version. If the product is free, then the product is you. So, but if you're paying for it, ChatGPT allows you to use a temporary mode. So nothing that, and this is what they say, so you can take that with a grain of salt, but nothing that you input will be stored or used to train their AI models within this temporary mode. So it's basically having that incognito mode on your browser. Whatever you put in there, it is there for that session, and then when you close it, it's gone. So if that helps with kind of querying some data that you're unsure of, that might put you more at ease. But I think for probably the vast majority of our stuff, unless you're uploading proprietary or sensitive information like recipes, if it's just raw learning data from an LMS, I think you'd probably be pretty good.
Yeah. The one other thing that I would just address with that too is it depends on the model you're using. So for example, I've preferred Claude because two reasons. One, it's a different logic model, but two, Claude by default has a more restrictive use of data. So their default position is more of it's not ours unless you said it's ours if you're on their paid models. So kind of that step, you don't take that extra step. You actually have to work harder in Claude to share your trained models out. It won't let you take your proprietary chats backend stuff public unless you work it. So some of that just has to do with the model. And I would talk with experts about what are the limitations, what's the coverage, and read the terms and conditions. Read them. Thank you.
Thank you both. Going back through the chat for some questions, and TJ asked, I think when Paul was showing the data ranking, TJ asked, can the data be stack ranked? In other words, like what location was the best or has the biggest opportunities, which items happen more frequently, etc. I'm guessing that has to do with prompting. Paul, can you answer that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I've learned is you really have to work on that prompt, right? Because, and at times it can be a little frustrating, right? You're like trying to get it to learn one thing or do something specific, and it's not doing what you need. So sometimes rearranging your words and how you ask for those specifics will really have it better understand what you're looking for. So is it perfect? No. Now, some of the paid versions have a better search engine, I guess you could say, or solution engine. I'm not sure exactly what the word is, but that will allow you to be a little bit more efficient. But again, just it goes back to the prompt, piggybacking on what Jim said, you have to really be specific on what you're asking for. The style, the generation, the tone are all going to be very important for that. When it comes to ranking or looking for those specific areas of opportunity, whether you're looking for speed of service, order accuracy, concerns or compliments, ranking which stores have the most concerns or compliments are all things that it can do. It's just finding the right prompt to get what you're looking for.
Excellent. And we had a question on the whether or not things like ChatGPT can handle large amounts of data, and the paid versions tend to definitely have a bigger scope of what they can
Exactly.
handle. So, Kelly, this was just a comment you had, but working on training for your multi-unit leaders to teach hands-on application. I did that today. I'm actually facilitating a training session downstairs right now, even as we speak. But I created a case study in ChatGPT, tweaked it a little bit to make it ours, and they are now working on their case study while I'm up here doing this webinar. So it was really much faster than starting with that blank piece of paper there. So really, really fantastic. Sunny asks, what about the environmental impact and ethical questions? Who would like to jump in on that? Donna, I see you nodding. Would you
I
like to?
cannot, I can always play. Like, 'cause I geek out over this stuff. I think that's a great question. I think that's becoming more and more important, right? Because even at the advent of, what was the AI revolution, one of the biggest concerns was, and if you back into it, right, NVIDIA got valuable because they were gaming chips. They were kind of a very niche market that suddenly had huge application. Well, even though you can do all of this processing, the infrastructure requirements are high. So there's a lot of concerns about what do you prioritize or not prioritize, and it is expensive. And there's improvements, I think, on the horizon, but I think on the responsible AI side, there's a couple of things. Number one, people are exploring it and they love the coolness factor, but I think I saw an article on like the literal financial cause of people saying please and thank you in their chat windows, right? Because every interaction, right? Every time you're like, oh, I didn't think, coming back to Jim's prompting piece, right? Or, the different things that we've looked at. Every time I didn't think it through and I have to run it again, um, you're using resources, you're using literal energy resources, and there's concerns about how do these demands compete with others? Now, I'm not going to get too far down the train track, but I think current responsible use is be smart. Where you can rinse and repeat, kind of like the GPT thing, where you can create once and control the environment of usage is the same thing as using recyclable bags, right? Anytime you can create once and create the ability to reuse instead of recreate, you can personally make an impact in more sustainable use and more sustainable adoption.
It's
So
digital recycling.
it is digital, and I think I think that's probably one of the things that is relevant to start talking about because people don't really think about AI is an infrastructure hog. It is an infrastructure hog. Like this is, you remember the old for those of us who are older than Google, if you were ever on dial-up and someone sent a picture and no one could access the internet for 3 whole hours. There was some of this, they're like, that's a thing. But if you ever had that, you were like, Bob, you can never upload another picture until after 5 because no one can work. It's that same approach with AI. That's the same issue we're having with current use and current infrastructure. I think that's a great question. And I think it's an important conversation.
Yeah, and I did read recently that Microsoft actually is reopening a closed nuclear power plant in Pennsylvania to power those data centers for AI. So at least there's movement within the tech industry to be a little bit more sustainable. I think obviously there's never enough that can be done to make sure that AI and even the future is, I think we're barely scratching the surface of what AI can do. We are in the dial-up era of AI at the moment. And so when this, just completely elevates by orders of magnitude, then those very things will be very needed.
Great, thank you. And so important to think about. And one more reason that the prompt is the thing to really focus on and get it right the first time to minimize the impact. I would not have thought of that without today's session. So thank you. I do not see any other questions in the chat, so I'm going to just wrap it up. And I'm going to close by encouraging you to do 2 things. First, if you're not already using AI in some way, get started. Baby steps. Baby steps will get you started on this, what I have found to be a fascinating journey. And there's so many tools and so many resources out there, including Chart. Chart as a resource for all of your training needs, not just AI, but really how do we support each other through our training challenges and through what we know and how we can share what we know with each other and learn from each other. So I would strongly encourage you to consider attending the Chart conference in Redondo Beach, August 3rd through 6th. And if you happen to be watching this at some time later, Chart offers 2 conferences a year, and you'll get more information on any of those conferences on our website, chart.org. So at the Redondo Beach one, we are offering a variety of both AI topics and breakouts on other topics to help get you set for success. So you can find out more and register for the conference, as I said, at chart.org. Thank you all so much for being here with us today. Thank you to the wonderful facilitators and for your bright ideas. And we look forward to learning more from you soon. Bye-bye, everybody.